So, you want to play Warhammer 40,000? Awesome. You've got your minis? Great. Painted them up? Looking very delightful, though of course that's not strictly necessary in friendly games. But you're not sure how to make an army. Army building is a staple of games of Warhammer 40k, and it has been around in some form since roughly the chapter-approved Book of the Astronomicon book in 1988. But the methods have changed. These days it's really all quite simple. You select a hero or HQ option, mark them as your warlord, and then pick units of models that you want in your army to fill out your roster. Only limit is for repeat units, only 3 units maximum for one specific type, unless they're battle line, and that only lets you take a maximum of 6 repeats. But what did army building look like in those earliest days? I'm rather curious to find out myself, so today I'm taking a look at army building for 3 armies in 3 different editions. So today, the mission is as such. I must make an army for the Eldar, Space Marines and Chaos Space Marines in Rogue Trader, Warhammer 40,000 2nd edition and Warhammer 40,000 3rd edition. In Rogue Trader, I will specifically be utilizing the rules from Warhammer 40,000 Compilation, Warhammer 40,000 Compendium, and Realm of Chaos Slaves to Darkness. Some models will not be era or even faction appropriate, but I will do my best to proxy only suitable things. And finally, for 3rd edition, I will not be doing Eldar, but Dark Eldar instead. My primary Eldar army is Drukhari, so I think it makes sense. Cool? Alright, let's do this. Rogue Trader's army lists were all over the place. If you wanted to play Orcs, you had 2 books to flip through, War the Orcs and Here We Go. And for that reason, even though we don't have the Codex system yet, we still have 3 books to use for our armies. The first book we'll be taking a look at is the Warhammer 40,000 Compendium, where, on page 129, we find the Space Marine army list. Right off the bat, something interesting about this army list is the complete lack of vehicles as units that you can buy. Instead, if you want vehicles and dreadnoughts, you needed to scroll down to the equipment list. With the exception of single-seated bikes, you needed a tech marine for each vehicle you wanted. If you wanted a mechanized army, you'd have to buy yourself some tech marines. We'll start off by listing these things. If you want a vehicle, you can buy a Vincent Black Shadow bike and Mark 14 Bullock jet cycle without needing a tech marine. But beyond that, you can buy a Black Shadow combination, which is a variety with a sidecar, a Land Speeder, a Gravattack, a Rhino, or a Land Raider. For support vehicles, you could take a Rapier battery with a multi-laser, a Tarantula battery with las cannons, a Mole mortar, or a Thud gun. For dreadnoughts, you could take a Contemptor armed with close combat weapons and 4 synchronized bolters, a Doredio armed with a missile launcher and crack and frag missiles as standard, and an arm-mounted bolt gun, or a Fury Bundus with a las cannon and an arm-mounted twin bolter. Finally, you could take robots, choosing from Crusaders, Colossi, Castellans, Cataphracts, or Conquerors. And yes, that's the same Castellans as what the Mechanicus has today, though certainly not the same models. Now for the army list itself. Your army needed at least 1 detachment commander unit, being the highest ranking personality in the army. Your detachment commander could be a lieutenant commander, second in command to the chapter master, what we might now consider the first captain. You could have up to 1 lieutenant commander who could be a champion, minor hero, or major hero. Up next, you could take a captain, of whom you could take up to 1 as a champion, minor hero, or major hero, and finally, you would have to take 1 lieutenant as a champion, minor hero, or major hero. A big enough army could theoretically have 3 detachment commander units. Next we have what would in Heresy be called consuls. Your army could have up to 3 chaplains, again as minor heroes, champions, or major heroes. You could have 1 to 6 librarians, of whom 1 would have to be a Lexicanian, a marine-level librarian. They could also have 1 champion-level Codicia, 1 minor hero epistolary, or 1 major hero chief librarian. If you wanted tech marines, you would have to roll 6d6 to see how many you could have. You did not, however, actually need to have any tech marines in your army, unless you want vehicles bigger than a bike. Your army would also have 1 to 4 medics, one of whom could be a Master of the Apothecarian, but at least 1 had to be a champion-level field medic. If you wanted to, you could upgrade your standard captain into a Terminator captain. You could do the same to your librarian as well. Now we move to the squads. Your army could have up to 8 tactical squads armed with bolters, up to 4 assault squads armed with combat knives and pistols, and up to 2 devastator squads armed with bolters and heavy weapons. Finally, you could take up to 4 tactical Terminator squads armed with power fists, chain fists, and storm bolters. Now, let's make our army. I'm going to start off with a Lieutenant Major Hero. Since lieutenants are mandatory, I feel it appropriate to make our army leader be one. Quick by the by, a lot of Warhammer editions are available on online army builder apps, but Rogue Trader is not one of them, so I'm going to use the tried and tested method of pen and notebook. Anywho, the equipment situation on the lieutenant is a bit strange. If you take the standard equipment, the lieutenant gets a bolter, a power sword, and a bionic eye and targeter. However, if you choose to give him special equipment, the lieutenant can't actually take a melee weapon at all, only a standard or heavy weapon. Fortunately, I have this guy. He's the captain from the Dark Vengeance box with a venerable dreadnought head. Technically he has a combi weapon, but let's just say it's a bolter. This leaves us with a 113-point lieutenant. Let's next make a librarian, since you need one to join your army. Since he will be the only librarian in the force, I'm making him a simple lexicanian with the standard gear, but with an additional force sword for 40 points. So this 22-point trainee librarian is wielding a sword almost twice as valuable as himself. I will also give him Mastery Level 1 for 25 points. This lets him use Level 1 Psychic powers, with a Psi level of 3d6 and d6 Psychic abilities. We start by rolling 3d6 to get his Psi level and get a 6, a 2 and a 2, a 10. Next we roll to see how many Psychic abilities we get with a 1d6, 3. And those abilities I'll roll up with a d10, and the first one I get is a 1. Aura of Resistance. Following that, I roll up an 8, giving me Telepathy 1, and finally a 6, Steel Mind. Up next, I'll make one Field Medic. He'll have the standard equipment since he just has the weapons on his profile on his person, sans bolter. Moving to squads, I'm taking one Tactical Squad with a Sergeant armed with a Power Glove, and one Terminator Squad with the Grenade Harness. This gives me a very infantry-focused army with one single point left to spare. Our next stop is a book where I've spent a good few hours now, Realm of Chaos Slaves to Darkness. A lot of the options are very much the same as with our standard Space Marine army list, so I'll quickly go over what's the same. I'll specifically be using the Black Legion army list as, while World Eaters and Emperor's Children would make for some nice and fluffy lists, I want to give a general feel for the Chaos army list. Your detachment commander could still be a lieutenant commander, captain or lieutenant. You could have up to 6 librarians, up to 4 medics, up to 3 chaplains and up to 5 D6 tech marines. You could take up to 10 tactical squads, up to 3 devastator squads and up to 3 assault squads. However, a bit more variation is brought in by the following squads. You could run up to D6 Possessed Marines, the demon possessing the warrior affecting the points cost and stat line, a single summoned Greater Demon, up to 2 or possibly D6-4 Demon Princes, the specific god of whom shall be selected via D4, up to 3 or D6-3 squads of summoned lesser demons, possibly unlimited numbers of Beastmen slave squads, and up to 4 or D6-2 Chaos Spawns. The vehicles work here the same way as with normal Space Marines. However, the first few units we'll be taking aren't from this book. They're found in the Warhammer 40,000 compilation, a book we'll be checking out again shortly. Just between articles about Assault Terminators and Guard Commissars, we get stat lines for Traitor Terminator Captains and Standard Traitor Terminator Squads. And with this, I'll be adding the first 2 units. The Force Commander will be a Traitor Terminator Captain, armed with the standard equipment of a Power Sword, Power Fist with Grenade Launcher, which I'll be putting as firing crack grenades, and a Storm Bolter. I'll make him a minor hero for 150 points. He'll be joined by a squad of Traitor Terminators for 450 points. Okay, but before we continue, we need to talk about these loadouts. The standard Chaos Terminator loadout is a Sergeant with a Stormbolter and Power Sword. Okay, cool, I get that, that's understandable. Then you have 3 Marines with Power Gloves and Stormbolters, yeah, cool. And then 1 Marine with a Stormbolter and Chain Fist. And if you want to give a Marine a Heavy Flamer or an Assault Cannon, what can you swap it out for? The Chain Fist. So you can have a Terminator with a Heavy Flamer and a Stormbolter. I'm guessing something has been misprinted here, but anyway, I'm just giving one of my Terminators a Chain Fist and another gets a Power Fist and Assault Cannon. The one guy with a Lightning Claw, pretend it's a Power Fist. Okay, moving on. I'm taking 1 Devastator squad with standard loadout with an added Power Glove for the Sergeant. This gives me a Black Legion force of 995 points. This may not seem like a lot of units, and let's be fair, it isn't. But you could also improve your guys with Chaos attributes, which they could get for no extra points cost. Each unit, Captain included, could take up to D4 - 2 personal attributes, with the Sergeants getting their own. I'll first roll up the number of attributes for everyone. The Captain gets a full 2, the Sergeants get nothing, the Terminators get nothing, and the Devastators get 1. To see what they get, we roll a 1d1000 on the personal attributes table. I'll roll up the 10s and singles. Blue dice is singles, pink is 10s. First for the Captain, a 27 and 96. And for the Devastators, a 92. Now we roll up the hundreds. A 2, so 227, another 2, so 296, and a 0, so a Devastator gets just a 92. This gives the Captain a burning body, increasing his toughness and fear level, and... Oh god damn it, not again! Couldn't they have called it hybrid? Whatever. I roll first on a d6 to see which table I roll for him. Table number 1. And then for a d12, I get a 2. A bear. Somehow quite fitting for some big dude in a Terminator suit. Would work even better for a space wolf. If you don't get it, ask a gay friends. There's also some rolling up for which parts of the body have been mutated in what way, but honestly I cannot be bothered. It's not like I'm going to go about snipping pieces of a rogue trade over a metal mini. Maybe if I buy that one eBay listing of a pair of damaged Space Marine Librarian legs. Anyway, the Devastators get Bestial Face. Simple as can be. Now I just roll them up to see what kind of a face each Marine gets. Oh, don't for a second think that I wouldn't roll up for every one of my Marines, with the exceptions of the poor left-out Sergeant. One Marine gets the face of a beast of their patron god. I'm going to say, as there are no Psychers, that these guys are followers of Khorne, giving him the face of a Fleshhound. Everyone else gets the faces of goats, essentially turning into beastmen. Up next we return to the compilation, where we find a full Eldar army list. Like I said previously, I have to be a little loose on the terminology here, since I just do not have the appropriate miniatures, save for one unit. We'll get to that. In fact, let's get to that right away. Let's start with the thing I won't have to proxy. An Eldar army taken with this book can take up to 1 troop of Harlequins, bringing us full circle back to the Warhammer 40,000 compendium. 1 troop consists of a quintet of troopers and 1 avatar. Fortunately for me, I have the exact perfect number of troopers. But even still, there will be a little bit of fudging with the rules as written here. Inferno pistols are not an option here, and it seems like fusion pistols were not made yet either. For the purposes of the rules, I will have to count the fusion pistols as plasma pistols. Furthermore, while the Harlequin's Kiss is certainly an option here, the Harlequin's Embrace and Harlequin's Caress is not. Since this does make things a little difficult, I will count all these weapons as Harlequin's Kisses, which leads us to one final problem: getting everyone their correct loadouts and points costs. This is one of those moments where I'm grateful for the army builder apps and websites. But yeah, that's half the army already. Now for the real fudging. The Eldar army can consist of up to 1 Avatar of Cain, any number of Aspect Warriors, and up to your number of Aspect Warriors in Exarchs, any number of Guardian squads, and up to as many support teams, any number of Warlocks, and up to 1 Farseer, and the aforementioned Harlequin troop. Let's start by adding one more character alongside a squad to lead, striking scorpions led by an Exarchs. And here's what I meant by fudging. This squad will be represented by 5 Incubi and Lady Malice. At least the Incubi are the correct color, even if their loadout doesn't match. The Exarch will be given an ancient weapon for 25 points and 1 warrior power. Normally you would roll for these, but the Dire Sword and the Distract felt fitting for the Archon of the Cabal of the Poisoned Tongue. Next, I'm taking a squad of Guardians. Each Guardian squad is 5 models strong and can be upgraded from the lasgun-wielding Guardians to shuriken weapon-wielding battle squads or a sword or double pistol-wielding close combat squad, what we'd call Storm Guardians now. I'm going for standard Guardians and giving one guy a las cannon, represented by this Cabalite's Dark Lance, and the leader a plasma gun, represented by a blaster. Finally, I'm taking one more Guardian squad to avoid having a points cost of 911. This squad will be simpler, with just 4 warriors and a leader with a flamer and power sword, represented by this guy with a shredder. This gives me an Eldar force of 976 points. And now, we can at last leave 1st edition behind. Things start getting significantly simpler when we get into 2nd edition. We don't have to go about jumping from publication to publication to find the rules for our forces. Sure, new rules for new vehicles were provided in issues of White Dwarf, but everything you needed to know about your army was found in your army's codex. Although, certain things will be made just a spell more difficult for me when using only the codex. You'll understand when I get to talking about the Chaos Army list. If you want to play 2nd edition in the modern day, there is a wonderful, if a spell drab looking battle bible which complains, all the complaining. If you want to play 2nd edition in the modern day, there is a wonderful, if a spell drab looking battle bible which compiles all the rules from 2nd edition 40k into one place. However, I will be exclusively using the codices for this. Building an army for 2nd edition was done on a percentage system. To those of you who play the Old World, this should be familiar to you, though there are a few differences in how this system works in the Old World and how it works in the 2nd edition. Your army must be led by an army commander. Him included, your army's characters must make up a maximum of 50% of your army's total costs. A minimum of 25% must be made up of squads. You also have support units, which includes things like vehicles and allies. Your army can also have their own special selection they can take. Let's start with Codex Ultramarines. Yes, Ultramarines, not Space Marines. There are actually 3 codices you could take if you wanted a Loyalist Space Marine army, those being Ultramarines, Space Wolves, and Angels of Death. And while my army is very red, they do not have any relations to Blood Angels, so Ultras it is. This list lets me take up to 50% in characters, a minimum of 25% in squads, and up to 50% in support. An Ultramarines army can have allies taken from other Space Marine armies, Imperial Guard, Imperial Agents, Squats, and Eldar army lists, but cannot include avatars. My army commander will be a standard captain in power armor. I'll be using the same model I used for the lieutenant in the last army list, so he gets a power sword and a combi plasma. Combi weapons are included as standard Imperial war gear, and as such can be found in the war gear cards in releases like Dark Imperium. For the time being, I'm leaving my force commander as such, and will move to squads. I'm starting off with something that wasn't available in the first army list we looked at: Scouts. Sure, Space Marine Scouts were added to the game later in Rogue Trader, but they weren't in the compendium, nor did they get rules in the compilation. I'll here be taking a 5-strong Scout squad armed with bolters and heavy bolters, with the Scout Sergeant getting a power sword and bolt pistol. Up next, I'll take one tactical squad. This one will be the same squad as the 1st edition tactical squad I took. One Marine with a missile launcher with frag and crack, another armed with a flamer. The Sergeant will be armed with a power fist. This has to be a minimum of 10 warriors strong, but later publications added combat squads to let you take smaller 5-man squads. Next, I'll be taking a unit I had completely neglected to take in the previous edition, a Tech Marine. In Rogue Trader, the Tech Marine had a significantly lessened variety of weapons at its disposal, and each Tech Marine could only take one vehicle or robot with him. In this game, one tech marine is enough to bring with him any number of vehicles. You're only limited with how many servitors you can take, 5 per tech marine. The tech marine will be taking a power axe, a bolt gun, and from the Imperium war gear, 1 graviton gun. Now for the support options. I won't be taking any allies for this one, though I certainly could if I so wished. My primary support option will be my pride and joy, the Land Raider. It will be taking an auxiliary Stormbolter for an extra piece of war gear. For one final option, I'll be taking a Librarian. He's still just a simple Lexicanium, but he'll still be getting his Force Sword. This time it won't be more expensive than he himself is. I'm left with 19 points to spare, so I'll be taking a piece of generic war gear in the form of the Aegis suit for my captain, giving him a 4-up save against psychic attacks. And with that, I have my Space Marine force complete. I could have probably taken the Terminators again, but I wanted to have some vehicles in this one for once. Moving away from Codex Ultramarines, we go to the other side of the same Space Marine coin, Codex Chaos. How very fair. Space Marines get 3 codices all to themselves, and Chaos has to fit cultists, Chaos Marines and Demons into one army book. The army building rules for standard Chaos Army, meaning mostly Chaos Space Marines, is much the same as for regular Space Marines, but your support allocation is only 25% instead of 50%. To supplement this, you can take up to 25% of your army as lesser demons. This too we shall get to. We start by making a leader in the form of a Chaos Lord. He shall be clad in Terminator armor, but here we immediately hit a bit of a snag. My Chaos Lord has an illegal loadout. Chaos Terminators cannot take power swords. However, they can take demon weapons, so we can just give our lord a demon weapon and say it's a Hellblade or something similar. On that note, I'm giving our Chaos Lord the Mark of Khorne. Now, of course, I need to take some squads, about 250 points worth of squads, and the first step is taking a squad of Chaos Space Marines. This squad will be 5 Marines strong and will have a Flamer, a Missile Launcher, and a Heavy Bolter. The next squad I take will have to think about a bit. I previously mentioned needing to fudge around with the Terminator Lord's rules a bit, but this one needs a significantly larger deal of fudging. Standard Chaos Terminators cannot take Lightning Claws or any types of swords. So, what do? Simple. I won't take Terminators. Instead, I'm taking a veteran Chaos Space Marine squad. This will be 5 Marines strong with 1 Power Fist, a Heavy Bolter, and a Missile Launcher. Look familiar? Now, if I wanted to, I could buy a Greater Demon, but the Bloodthirster is one of the most expensive units in this army, even more expensive than the Land Raider. As such, I will be simply taking 5 Bloodletters. But what else might there be to take? This. This is what there is to take. This is a Chaos Dreadnought. Rogue Trader had some as well, but they had very different designs to this one here and were far less lethal. I mean, I don't know how they were on the tabletop, but you plop this bastard here in a sock and you have a pretty effective improvised flail. This dreadnought will be carrying a Power Scourge and a heavy plasma gun, as well as hull-mounted twin bolters, and since I have 25 points to spare, I will give it some ablative armor to keep it safe. And with that, we now have 987 points of Chaos Space Marines. Now we've finished this edition off with the final corner of the 40k faction triangle, the Xenos. Codex Eldar lets you use up to 50% of your points on characters. You must use a minimum of 25% of your force on squads, and may use up to 50% on support. Eldar also allows you to take 50% of your army as Harlequins, but you may also choose to make up your entire army of Harlequins. Your force commander must be either an Avatar or a Farseer, and for a Harlequin force it must be a Great Harlequin. I'll start off with a Farseer, which is again represented by Lady Malice. I think she's a bit more suited to represent a Farseer than my other Archon mini. She will be armed with a Power Sword and a Displacer Field, comparatively simple for a hero than our others. Once more do I find myself in a bit of a pickle. Harlequin squads are in minimum squads of 10, and I find myself 4 to 5 models short. I'm going to have to take a gander at what I can take in their stead. To add a second character, and to have myself some sensible use for my Cabalites, I'm adding one squad of 10 Eldar Pirates. This second character I have will be my Archon, pulling the double duty of a pirate captain. This captain will have herself a needle pistol and a power sword. Finally, one of my Drukhari gets a weapon that is suited for their use. She'll be made a pirate hero. Her squad will be armed with shuriken catapults. Up next, we're bringing back the Incubi as striking scorpions. 5 striking scorpions specifically, armed with their standard loadout. Next, 2 squads of witches to represent howling banshees, 5 of them per squad, and 10 older Kabalites as guardians with shuriken catapults. I will also take a flamer and a meltagun, represented by a blaster and a shredder. This leaves me with 59 points to spare, but on what? I've run dry on models I could use. I do have a few bikes and rangers back at my parents' place, but that's 400 odd kilometers away. So this is unfortunately where I run dry. Still, did better putting this army together than I would have with orcs or tyrannids. We finally reached 3rd edition, and here we say hello to something that'll bring back fond memories to you who came to this game between 3rd and 9th editions. The Force Organization Chart. The way the Force Organizational Chart worked is as follows. Each army is split into 5 unit categories. These categories are Headquarters or HQ, Troops, Elites, Fast Attack, and Heavy Support. Each force had to take 1 compulsory HQ option and 2 compulsory troops, so without further ado, let's get to it with Codex Space Marines. I'll start off by taking a Space Marine hero. Technically speaking, the army's leader could also be a librarian or a chaplain if I so wished, but I'm opting for a standard commander. This commander could also take a command squad, giving him a retinue of 5 veterans, including, possibly, a standard bearer, tech marine, and apothecary. I take myself a command squad, but only with tech marine and apothecary. For the 2 compulsory troops, I'm taking a scout squad and a tactical squad. The scouts will get a veteran sergeant armed with a power sword and a bolt pistol, while the squad itself is armed with bolters, a sniper rifle, and a heavy bolter. The tactical squad will have the same loadout as in the previous list. I'll be adding 1 fast attack option to this list, in the form of a bike squad. This squad has 2 bikers and a sergeant with a close combat weapon. For heavy support, I'm bringing the Land Raider into the army. By this point, the Land Raider would have gotten its modern model, but this one will be given a pintle-mounted storm bolter. Ignore the fact that it's a heavy bolter. Finally, for elites, I'm adding a dreadnought with a storm bolter close combat weapon and an assault cannon. And that's 994 points worth of Space Marines. The 3rd edition had 3 more bespoke Space Marine codices for the Space Wolves, Blood Angels, and Dark Angels, and they got 2 more pure Space Marine lists with the Salamanders and Black Templars in Codex Armageddon. Now, what about Chaos? Well, first we need to decide which Chaos Codex we want to use, as 3rd edition had 2. I mentioned the first one from 1999 in the Khorne video, so let's take a look at the second one from 2002. After all, the main selling point of the 1999 one these days is Doom Rider, and I do not have his model, much to my chagrin. As the paint scheme shown might indicate, my army is Wordbearers. On page 43 of the Codex, we find that the Wordbearers have some army specializations and rules. All Wordbearers have only the mark of Chaos Undivided, but may use any type of demon. A Wordbearer's Lord or Lieutenant may be named a Dark Apostle, and wields the Accursed Crozius, and are granted the Demagogue ability. The Wordbearers may replace an Elite's, Fast Attack, or Heavy Support choice with 1 from Troops, effectively giving the Wordbearers 9 troop slots and 2 of all others should they wish. The unique Wordbearers upgrades are the Accursed Crozius and the Demagogue ability, as you could expect. So let's start making our selections. We'll start off with a Chaos Lord, as is tradition. I give him Terminator armor with a power weapon and a combi bolter and the mark of Chaos Undivided, but I also add in a second HQ option in the form of a Chaos Lieutenant, and make him my Dark Apostle. He gets the Demagogue ability, mark of Chaos Undivided, and an Accursed Crozius. He will also not be the only model on an inappropriate base size. We do, of course, also need some troops. As I have the ability to, I will take but a single squad of Chaos Space Marines. The squad will be led by an aspiring champion wielding a power fist and a bolter, and the squads will have a missile launcher and a flamer. As for the other troops option, I will be taking a demon pack of 5 bloodletters. Up next, I'm taking an obliterator cult. While I wish I could be taking some of the goofy old 90s obliterators or one of the era-appropriate ones, I'm opting for this one that looks like a Saturnine Terminator, and I'll be taking 2 of them. I'll also take a squad of possessed Chaos Space Marines and giving them demonic flight, essentially turning them into not quite warp talons. Finally, I'm taking the Defiler, one of the first demon engines that Chaos got. I'll also give him the Parasitic Possession upgrade that gives the vehicle a chance to repair any immobilized or weapon destroyed effects. I don't have any further units to take, with 51 points to spare, so I'll give some of my units a few upgrades. My Dark Apostle gets the Personal Icon War Gear and the Furious Charge Veteran skill. My Chaos Lord gets the Counterattack skill and a Demonic Essence to give him an extra wound. And with that, my 3rd edition Wordbearer's army is at 999 points. Let's finish this with some devious style. We've reached the last army of this video, and we can finally drop most of the fudging with the rules and call a spade a spade. We're making a Dark Eldar army, and we're doing something we've not yet tried. We're bringing in allies. We'll start off with a leader. I'll start off with an Archon Lord, no surprises to be found here, Lady Malice herself. I'll give her the war gear Animus Vitae, and the single-handed weapons Poisoned Blades and Power Weapon. Simple as could be. She'll also get a retinue of 4 Incubi and an Incubi Master, who get a pair of power weapons to represent the Demiclaves. For troops, we are staying simple. Cabalites with 1 blaster, 1 splinter cannon and a Dark Lance led by a Cyberite with a splinter rifle and poisoned blades, and 1 Raider squad with 9 Cabalites with a Shredder and a splinter cannon led by a Cyberite with an Agonizer. The Raider itself will get a Dark Lance. Next, we're getting a little more complex. Our allies pick is going to be a troop of Harlequins. They're led by a troop's master wielding a fusion pistol and a power weapon, and wears a Rictus mask. The rest of the troop needs a bit of fudging again, as Neurodisruptors are no longer available. Furthermore, only 2 Harlequins in a troop can wield special weapons, those being the Harlequin's Kiss, the power weapon, fusion pistol, and plasma pistol. But we do what we can. So the loadout is 2 Harlequin's Kisses, a fusion pistol, and a plasma pistol. The others have only shuriken pistols and close combat weapons. Next, I'll take a single heavy support option in the form of the Ravager, which will be armed with a trio of Dark Lances with the Screaming Jets upgrade. Finally, to round this list out, I'll take a single squad of 7 Witches with 1 Blaster, which is how I'm representing the Blast Pistol on the Hecatrix. And that's it! Quite the force, wouldn't you agree? And with that, we come to the end of this little demonstration of army building. Back in Rogue Trader, you didn't really need to take anything unless it was specified in the rules. Only actual specifications were things like needing a Tech Marine, Tech Priest or Engineer to take more fancy vehicles, and ideally taking a detachment commander to lead your army. Only exceptions seem to be the standard Space Marine force in Citadel Compendium, which needed you to take a Lieutenant, Librarian and Medic, but those might have been errors or something they decided to do away with in later army lists. 2nd edition took on a similar approach to what 4th edition Fantasy had done, leading to an age that is commonly referred to as Hero Hammer, as super powerful hero characters with many upgrades were very common to see at the time. And in 3rd edition we moved to a format that was in use from then until the end of 9th edition, and even then Heresy used the same system until 2025's 3rd edition. The Force organizational chart was a staple of army building back in the day, and is even fondly remembered today, with it getting only minor tweaks with stuff like Lords of War. These days, the Force organizational chart has been left by the wayside completely, with 10th edition removing the system completely, only requiring you to take a single hero unit, and the rest getting more freeform. I feel like this has removed some of the flavor that the Force organizational chart had, and feels, somehow, even more restrictive. As for Heresy, they've swapped for a detachment system, with different detachments allowing you to take different unit types, which are now split into High Command, Command, Retinues, Elites, Heavy Assault, Troops, Support, War Engines, Transports, Heavy Transports, Recon, Fast Attack, Armor, Lords of War, and Warlord, with some army-specific unit types besides. There's a bit more to remember, but all in all, the game's army building has kept most of the charm of the Force organizational chart. Maybe the 11th edition of 40k will bring a new army building system. Maybe we'll be sticking to this current system for many editions to come. I know what I'll be hoping for, if nothing else. Thank you for watching this video. Sorry that there had to be so much fudging with the Eldar like I said. I don't have a proper Eldar army to use for this. What army building method is your favourite? Since I started in 9th edition, I do have a fondness for the Force organizational chart, though I do quite like the 2nd edition method of army building as well. Maybe I should get some servitors. Or maybe some robots, and a few B-keys to convert into Chaos Tech Marines. That'd be fun, I reckon. Also, sorry that this episode is a week late. This is going to be happening again next time. The next episode will be in 2 weeks. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!